Hi, I am Arm. The anime I am going to recap today is Chronicles of an Aristocrat Reborn in Another World. The boy Kane gains extremely powerful mana after he is reincarnated in another world. He easily defeats terrifying monsters, which makes the princess and the lady from a noble family crazy for him. After seeing him, the two beauties stay with him without a second of leaving, even sleeping with him, which makes him happy and tired. In this part, what will happen between him and the beauties? Like and subscribe, and let's see. As I mentioned before, after being baptized, Kane gained powerful talents, defeating the strong dragon alone at the age of 10. Also, he was given 100 times more experience points than normal, so now he is at a very high level. All the children of nobles need to go to the royal capital for their debut into society when they are 10 years old. On this day, Kane and his family decide to leave for the capital. On their way, they might encounter danger because there are many monsters nearby. Therefore, they are protected by many knights. But in fact, Kane does not need anyone's protection at all, and he has the ability to defeat any monsters. Halfway through, Kane detects a nearby battle where several humans are besieged by a group of monsters, so he decides to offer help immediately. He thinks that riding the carriage is too slow, so he directly uses the wind magic to fly to the battlefield. Meanwhile, in the battlefield, the monsters have defeated most of the soldiers. The surviving soldiers are guarding a luxurious carriage, but they will soon be defeated as well. Fortunately, Kane arrives in time, and with his powerful magic, he defeats half of the monsters in an instant. The other half of the monsters are fighting the soldiers, and Kane may hurt the soldiers if he attacks with magic, so he kills the other monsters with his sword. He then heals all the wounded soldiers with the healing magic. By the time Kane's father and knights arrive, the battle is long over. Suddenly, the door of the luxurious carriage opens. The royal princess, Telestia, and the noble girl, Silk, walk out, and they express their gratitude to Kane. Kane can tell that they are still frightened, so he uses calming magic to calm them. After that, Telestia and Silk fall in love with Kane at the first sight. When they hear that Kane also leaves for the capital, they separately hold Kane's two arms and take him into the carriage. In the carriage, they are unwilling to let go of Kane for 1 second and lean on his shoulders all the time. It takes several days to reach the capital, and they need to rest for a night in another city along the way. After arriving in the city, Telestia and Silk still don't want to leave Kane, even asking him to sleep with them. Kane feels it difficult to reject them, and finally, he has no other choice but to stay in one room with them. There are 3 beds in this room, and Telestia and Silk put 3 beds together in order to sleep in the same bed as Kane. At night, Kane is too nervous to fall asleep at all. The next day, he feels very tired, but soon they arrive in the capital. The head of the knights in the capital sees Telestia and Silk holding Kane's hand and feels very strange at first, but when he learns that Kane saved the 2 girls, he understands them and respects Kane very much. After that, Kane buries the dead soldiers with the knights. Later, the head of the knights asks Kane to go directly to meet the king in the palace. It turns out that the king is very curious about Kane when he heard that Kane defeated the terrifying monsters alone and saved Telestia and Silk. When the king sees Kane, he is very happy, so he decides to promote Kane to Baron and give him a mansion. Among the other nobles present, there is one who thinks that Kane is too young to receive such a reward, but the king directly asks him to fight the monsters alone just like Kane, and tells him to shut up if he can't do this. After hearing this, the noble can only recognize the king's decision. Kane successfully gets promoted to Baron. After that, the king wants to meet Kane again in private. Later, Kane and his father come to the king's reception area, and the king and Silk's father also arrive with their daughters. This time, the king, as a father, thanks Kane again. Immediately afterwards, he and Silk's father make a very surprising request. That is, they hope that Kane make a marriage contract with Telestia and Silk. It turns out that they learn that Telestia and Silk are close to Kane during their journey, so they want Kane to be responsible for this and marry 2 girls in the future. Kane also loves these 2 beautiful girls, so although he feels very shy, he still agrees to it. After that, the gods summon Kane again. They tell him that he is now the strongest human, and that if he becomes stronger, he will become a demigod. Hearing this, Kane is very surprised. This time, the gods summon Kane because they want to ask him to introduce Japanese entertainments to the world, because in this world, people rarely know what entertainment is. Later, Kane returns to the real world. When he accompanies his sister to the clothing store, he happens to meet a cat girl. The girl is his friend since childhood, and her uncle happens to be the president of a chamber of commerce. So Kane offers to visit the chamber of commerce, intending to test its strength. After investigation, Kane thinks the chamber is not bad, so he tells the president that he wants to make a board game. There are no board games in this world, but after Kane explains the rules to the president thinks that this board game will definitely be popular. What Kane asked the president to make is a reverse board game, which is an interesting board game with simple rules. By spending so much time on this matter, Kane forgets that his sister is still waiting for him in the clothing store. Kane's sister is very angry, but when hearing Kane praising her new clothes for looking good, she becomes happy again. The next day, the model of the Reversi is done. Kane thinks the model is great and they should start mass production right away. He suggests that the president make two versions. One is a cheap version that the commoners can also afford, and the other is an expensive version for nobles. Kane wants to produce thousands of the Reversi, but the Chamber of Commerce doesn't have enough money, so he provides the money to produce it. There is a special custom in this world that when new goods appear, they must first offer it to the god of commerce. So Kane and the president start a ritual and sacrifice the model of the Reversi to the god of commerce. Kane knows the gods will love the game. After Kane returns home from the Chamber of Commerce, the maid immediately reminds him to go to a ball. Later, Kane's parents take him to the ball, which all the nobles in the kingdom will attend, including Telestia and Silk. Kane greets Silk and her father very gentlemanly. Since Kane's soul is a young man, not a child, he behaves maturely. This makes Silk's father feel a little strange, because Kane is so good at socializing. He looks a bit like a playboy. Kane and his parents are embarrassed by this. Soon after, Kane and his parents go to meet the king, who gives the same assessment that Kane is a bit of a playboy. After listening to it, Kane quickly changes the subject, taking out the Reversi as a gift. The king is very happy about this. After this, the adults go to socialize, so Kane's parents ask Kane to play with the other children. While Kane is chatting with Silk, a marquis son with two ass-kissers provokes Kane. They don't know Kane's identity and think he has a low status. In fact, Kane's father is a count, a higher status than their fathers. Then the son of the Marquis offers to duel Kane, which Kane doesn't refuse. They come to the grass outside. The Marquis' son and two ass-kissers try hard to gather all their mana, but in the end, they only cast very weak magic. Their fire magic is like a candle flame, and they only summon a small stone with the earth magic. Kane can easily defeat them with just a finger, but Kane doesn't really want to fight these kids, so Silk reveals Kane's identity. The story of Kane defeating dozens of monsters alone has long spread throughout the country. When the Marquis' son and two ass-kissers learn Kane's identity, they are shocked and immediately kneel down to beg for mercy, hoping that Kane can forgive their rudeness. Kane, of course, won't blame the kids, so he forgives them. Silk can tell that the reason why Kane didn't reveal his identity before is that he wants to tease these kids, so she jokingly says that Kane must date her, otherwise, she will tell others. At this time, Telestia notices that Kane and Silk are chatting, so she joins them. They agree to go on a date together next time. Coincidentally, when passing by, the king hears their conversation, and is now more convinced that Kane is a playboy. That brings the end of Chronicles of an Aristocrat Reborn in Another World episodes 3 and 4. Kane happens to save two beautiful girls who turn out to be a noble and a princess. More importantly, they both fall in love with Kane. This is so lucky for Kane, but it may also bring him trouble. Perhaps in the future, he needs to make a choice between Telestia and Silk, and no matter which girl he chooses, the other will be sad. I hope that Kane can eventually find a way to make both of them happy. At the end of the story, I want to ask you a question. If you need to create an activity for entertainment in another world, what would you choose? Comment below to share your answers. If you also like this anime, please like and subscribe. If you want to see the next part of this anime, comment below to tell me. See you next time.